What happens when the very life you sacrificed everything for no longer recognizes you? Nora Thompson had dreams bigger than her small-town life. She traded love for law school, motherhood for ambition. But years later, one question from the daughter she left behind shattered everything she thought she'd gained. It wasn't a courtroom that broke her. It was the soft voice of a child, asking for a truth no verdict could deliver. This is the story of a woman who thought success meant letting go, and of a single father who never stopped holding on. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The sound of train brakes echoed across the sleepy town of Maple Ridge as Nora Thompson gripped her suitcase tightly. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes stayed focused on the platform ahead. She didn't look back, not even once. Behind her stood Daniel Blake, holding their 2-year-old daughter, Ellie, in his arms. His eyes weren't pleading anymore. They were tired, defeated. Nora had made up her mind. Harvard Law School had sent the acceptance letter. Full ride. She said it was her shot. Her only shot. Daniel had asked her to stay. Just one more year until Ellie started school. Just one more year of pancakes, bedtime stories, and toy-strewn floors. But Nora had spent years feeling stuck, believing that love and ambition couldn't live in the same house. So she kissed Ellie's forehead, the child too young to know what was happening, and boarded the train. She promised she'd be back. She promised it wasn't forever. But promises made on train platforms have a way of vanishing behind clouds of steam. In the beginning, Nora called. She sent packages, little trinkets from Boston. Law textbooks, city postcards, letters with lipstick kisses. But time wore down her consistency. The late nights, internships, and hunger to prove herself became all-consuming. Calls became messages. Messages became silence. And Daniel, he stopped waiting. Not out of bitterness, but for survival. He poured himself into raising Ellie. He learned to braid her hair, pack school lunches, and soothe her nightmares. Maple Ridge knew him as the single dad who never gave up. Ellie grew up with questions she rarely asked. Her mom was a name, not a presence. She'd stare at a fading photo on her dresser. Nora in her college blazer, standing beside a smiling Daniel. Ellie wondered if her mother missed her, or if maybe she'd just been too hard to love. Daniel never badmouthed Nora. He said people make choices. Some you live with, some you come back from. But deep inside, Ellie carried a quiet ache, one that no court ruling could explain. 15 years later, Nora stood at the top floor of a high-rise in Manhattan, surrounded by glass walls and marble silence. She had done it. Made partner, earned accolades, and defended CEOs whose worlds revolved around numbers, not people. But as she stared at her own reflection, framed by city lights, she couldn't ignore the faint shadow that never left her, the image of a child on a train platform. She had pictures of Ellie in her desk drawer. School photos Daniel had sent every year, even after the communication dried up. She never opened them. Too painful. Too late. She told herself Ellie was better off, stable, loved, away from the chaos of courtrooms and closing arguments. But that excuse wore thin over time. Nora dated. She tried to fill the emptiness with milestones and bonuses. But success, she realized, had a hollow echo. Every time she won a case, she lost a little more of the girl who once believed ambition could save her from becoming ordinary. Nora had everything she thought she wanted, except the only thing that ever truly mattered. It arrived on a Thursday. No return address, just neat handwriting on a pale blue envelope. Nora nearly threw it away, assuming it was another alumni newsletter. But something made her pause. Inside was a letter. Short, simple, written in the hand of a teenager. Dear Nora, Melly, I'm 16 now. I'd like to see you, if you want. This weekend I'll be at the Maple Ridge Community Play. Minute. It's called The Lost Star. I'm the lead. Nora read it 3 times. Her hands shook. She hadn't seen her daughter in over a decade. What would she say? What could she possibly offer now? But beneath the nerves, something cracked open. A sliver of hope, or maybe guilt in disguise. She booked a ticket that night, leaving behind the city that never knew what she had left behind. As the plane took off, Nora closed her eyes and whispered the words she never dared before. Please let her still want me. The town hadn't changed much. The diner still served burnt coffee. The gas station still had that broken pump. But to Nora, everything felt smaller, like memories shrunk in a dryer. She arrived just before the play, dressed in black, hiding in the back row. The lights dimmed. The curtain rose. And there she was. Ellie, now nearly grown, standing center stage, delivering her first monologue with fierce, quiet grace. Nora's breath caught. Her daughter was radiant, confident. But behind the performance, Nora noticed something else, pain. It wasn't in the words, but in the eyes. As the show ended, applause thundered. Nora remained seated, frozen. Ellie walked onto the stage for the final bow, then paused. Her eyes scanned the audience. And then they met Nora's. Just for a second. Ellie didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply turned and walked off the stage. Nora's chest tightened. She stood to leave, but her knees wobbled. That moment, that gaze. It wasn't a reunion. It was a verdict. And Nora knew. Her second chance wouldn't be handed to her. She'd have to earn it. Outside the theater, the chill of evening air wrapped around Nora like consequence. She stood beside a tree, half hidden, rehearsing lines in her head. But this wasn't a courtroom. She wasn't in control. Daniel emerged first, smiling proudly, greeting neighbors. Then came Ellie, her hair pinned up, cheeks still flushed from stage lights. She moved confidently, until she saw Nora standing there, hands clasped tight, eyes wide like she was facing a ghost. They didn't hug. Ellie didn't rush into her arms. Instead, she stopped a few feet away. "You came," she said flatly, as if surprised but unsure how to feel. Nora nodded, her voice trembling. "You were incredible." Ellie looked down at her shoes, then back at her father, who watched from a distance. "Why now?" she asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Nora had no answer. Not a good one. Just a truth. "Because I couldn't stay away this time." It wasn't enough. But it was the first crack in the wall between them. They sat at the old corner cafe the next morning. Nora stirred her coffee slowly, her lawyer's mask cracking in the soft morning light. Across from her, Ellie sat stiffly, one hand fidgeting with the zipper on her hoodie. The silence between them was louder than any courtroom gavel. Nora tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I used to drink coffee here all the time. Your dad and I." Ellie cut her off gently. "I don't remember." It wasn't meant to wound, but it did. Still, she didn't walk away. She stayed, out of curiosity or courage. Nora couldn't tell. "I kept your pictures," Nora said. "Every single one your dad sent." Ellie finally looked up. "Then why didn't you answer even one letter I sent you when I was 9? Nora's throat tightened. "I read them all," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to be what you deserved." Ellie blinked back something. Anger, maybe sadness. "I didn't need perfect. I needed my mom." The words sank deep. Nora lowered her gaze, realizing just how long love had been waiting. Later that afternoon, Nora walked to the edge of town where Daniel still lived. The same modest home, the same wooden porch swing Ellie had once rocked herself to sleep on. He opened the door with the same calm presence she remembered, though there were more lines on his face now. "You're brave for coming," he said gently, stepping aside to let her in. "I'm not sure that's the word," Nora replied. "Desperate might be closer." Inside, the house was filled with warmth. Family photos lined the shelves. Ellie as a toddler, Ellie at school, Ellie dressed as a snowflake in a kindergarten play. None included Nora. That stung. Daniel poured tea and sat across from her. "You've missed a lot," he said, not cruelly, just plainly. "I know," she admitted. "I thought I could come back and just explain." He shook his head slightly. "Ellie doesn't need an explanation. She needs proof. That you'll show up. Again. And again." Nora nodded, swallowing hard. Love, she realized, didn't live in apology. It lived in presence. That evening, Ellie sat alone on the school bleachers, watching younger kids rehearse for next week's performance. Nora approached slowly, unsure whether to sit beside her or not. Ellie scooted slightly, offering space without saying a word. Nora took it. For a while they just watched, the clumsy lines, the missed cues, the awkward giggles. "I was scared," Nora said softly, "that I'd only mess you up if I stayed. So I ran." Ellie didn't look at her. "You messed me up by leaving too." The honesty was a wound and a gift all at once. Nora nodded, tears building. "I don't want to run anymore," she said. "But I know wanting doesn't fix everything." Ellie's voice cracked just slightly. "You say you want to stay, but what if next time work calls again?" Nora turned, steady now. "Then I'll answer with your name first." Ellie finally looked her in the eye. "You're not forgiven," she said. "Not yet." Nora nodded again. "That's fair. We'll wait. As long as it takes." The moment wasn't healing, but it was beginning. Back at Daniel's house, Ellie brought Nora a small box. "I kept this," she said, placing it on the kitchen table. Nora opened it slowly. Inside was a faded ballerina music box, the one Nora had left behind when she moved out, a gift from her own mother. The tiny figure still twirled when wound, though the melody was slower now. "I used to play this when I missed you," Ellie said, her voice distant. "I thought if I played it enough you'd come back." Nora's hand shook as she touched the dancer. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I was so focused on building a future. I didn't realize I was tearing something down behind me." Ellie watched her. "Do you even like being a lawyer?" The question hit like a verdict. Nora paused. "I used to. But lately, I think I was just trying to prove I could be more than what this town expected." Ellie replied quietly. "I never wanted more. I just wanted you." In that moment, the years collapsed between them, and something new began to grow. A few mornings later, Ellie slid a folded piece of paper across the kitchen table. "We're hosting a fundraiser at school next weekend," she said without looking up. "We need volunteers for ticket sales, decorations, crowd control." Nora opened the note and scanned the list. "You're asking me to help?" Ellie shrugged. "You said you wanted to prove you're staying. This is your shot." Her tone was neutral, but there was hope beneath the challenge. Nora accepted immediately. She showed up the next day, wearing jeans and an old hoodie borrowed from Daniel's closet. She hung streamers, taped up signs, and even helped build a booth, without trying to lead or impress. It was a start. The teachers were polite but surprised, whispering when they thought she couldn't hear. Nora didn't mind. She wasn't there for them. She was there for one girl in a ponytail who kept glancing over her shoulder, silently measuring whether her mother could hold steady when the work wasn't easy or glamorous. And for once, Nora did. One afternoon, as Nora helped stack chairs in the gym, a teacher asked her if she missed her career. Nora paused. "I miss the discipline," she said. "The feeling of knowing what's coming next." Then she glanced toward Ellie, who was laughing with friends across the room. "But courtrooms don't give you love. They give you verdicts. And love doesn't work like that. The teacher nodded quietly. There was something profound in the way Nora said it, like a lawyer who had finally learned to live without closing arguments. Later that night, Daniel found her sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. "You know," he said, "Ellie told me you didn't run today when someone spilled juice on your shoes." Nora laughed softly. "Old me would have had a meltdown." Daniel smiled. "Old you wouldn't be here at all." There was silence. Then he added, "You're doing good, Nora. Not perfect, but real." She blinked back emotion. For once, the courtroom she'd built in her head, full of guilt, defense, and doubt, was quiet. And all that remained was her learning to show up without needing to win. A few days later, Ellie asked Nora to help her clean the attic. It was dusty, cramped, and filled with boxes marked with Daniel's neat handwriting. First grade, old toys, mom's stuff. One box made Nora freeze. It was her old belongings, things Daniel had packed after she left. Scarves, books, an old perfume bottle, and photos she hadn't seen in years. "I didn't throw it out," Daniel said from the doorway. "Didn't seem right to erase you." Nora sat on the floor, holding a faded picture of her holding baby Ellie in her arms. Her throat tightened. "I was scared I wouldn't be good at this," she murmured. "You were," Daniel replied gently. "Until you left." Ellie sat beside her. "You could be good again," she said. "If you stop running." Nora looked at her daughter. Not a little girl anymore, but someone brave enough to offer another chance. Nora didn't make promises this time. She simply said, "I want to stay. One day at a time." And for the first time, Ellie nodded. The night of the fundraiser, Ellie stood backstage in her school's auditorium, organizing the student performers. Nora manned the entrance table, selling tickets, greeting parents, handing out programs. Then she saw it, her name printed in small letters at the bottom. "Special thanks to Nora Thompson." It was the first time in over a decade her name appeared in something tied to Ellie. And it wasn't a legal document. It was something real. When Ellie saw Nora reading the program, she blushed. "I thought you might like it," she said quietly. "I do," Nora replied, clutching the paper like a lifeline. "More than you'll ever know." That night, as the performances unfolded, Nora didn't look at her phone once. She watched every act, clapped the loudest, and cried when Ellie sang a solo at the end, a song about coming home. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, but it was movement. Subtle, real. The kind of healing that doesn't need courtroom drama. Just time, trust, and presence. That evening, Nora sat with Ellie and Daniel in the living room, warm drinks in hand, soft music playing in the background. It was late, but no one seemed to want to end the night. For the first time, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Nora looked at the clock, realizing how often she'd lived her life by deadlines and schedules. But in that moment, the clock didn't matter. Her daughter was beside her, her past was acknowledged, and her future, uncertain yes, now included something more than ambition. Ellie leaned against her father's shoulder, her voice quiet but clear. "I don't know if I'll ever stop being mad at you," she said. Nora nodded. "You don't have to," she replied. "Just, let me try to be here now." Ellie didn't respond right away, but after a few moments, she rested her head on Nora's arm. And Nora didn't move, didn't breathe too hard. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't chasing anything. She was simply there in the moment, finally understanding what it meant to stay. That weekend, Nora went through her old briefcase and pulled out a wrinkled envelope, unopened, edges worn. It was one of Ellie's childhood letters, sent when she was 9. Nora had kept them all, but this one felt heavier. She finally opened it. In childish handwriting were simple words. "Dear Mom, I hope you still remember me. I miss you when it rains. Do you miss me too?" Nora couldn't stop the tears this time. The sentence hit harder than any courtroom accusation ever had. She sat down and wrote a reply, not to send, but to say what she'd never had the courage to. "I remember everything. And I've missed you every day. I didn't stop loving you. I just forgot how to show it." She folded the letter, placed it inside Ellie's old music box, and left it on her nightstand. The next morning Ellie found it. She didn't say anything right away. But when she hugged Nora without a word, something deep and silent passed between them. Forgiveness didn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it just needed to be felt. One rainy afternoon, Ellie slipped on a wet step outside the porch. It wasn't serious, just a small fall, but it startled her. Instinctively she called out, "Mom!" And Nora came running. Dressed, barefoot, no hesitation. That single moment, small as it seemed, mattered more than any reunion dinner or grand gesture. Because in the past, Ellie had cried out her mother's name into silence. But now someone answered. Someone stayed. Daniel watched from the window, a quiet smile tugging at the edge of his lips. Nora held Ellie tightly, brushing mud off her jeans. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." And she meant it. From that day forward, Ellie started to refer to her as Mom again. Not always, but enough. It was the beginning of trust, built not on words but on showing up. Nora had once chosen ambition over family. Now she was choosing presence. One morning, one crisis, one ordinary day at a time. Months passed, and Nora didn't leave. She found remote legal work she could manage from Maple Ridge. It didn't pay as much, and no prestigious firm was calling her name. But that was fine. She walked Ellie to school, attended parent meetings, and even baked cookies for a fundraiser, burning half the tray in the process. "You're a better mom than you are a baker," Ellie teased. And for the first time, Nora laughed at herself, because now the failure was part of the growth, not the shame. Daniel and Nora spoke more openly. No pressure. No rekindled romance. Just two people raising a child they both loved. And Ellie, the bridge between past and present, began to flourish in the space they created together. Nora didn't ask for perfection anymore. She asked for progress. And as the seasons changed, so did the story. Nora hadn't just come back. She had transformed. What started as guilt had turned into purpose. And that, she realized, was more than a second chance. It was a new kind of beginning. One evening, as they folded laundry together, Ellie asked the question Nora had feared since the day she returned. "Mom, why did you leave us?" Nora paused. She didn't spin it. She didn't deflect. She looked her daughter in the eye and said, "Because I thought success meant I had to be somewhere else. I thought chasing my dreams would make me worth loving. I was wrong." Ellie stayed quiet. Nora continued, "Leaving was my biggest mistake. Not because I lost you, but because I made you feel you weren't enough. And you always were." Ellie nodded slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't storm off. She simply whispered, "I needed to hear that." It wasn't forgiveness wrapped in a bow. It was truth accepted without armor. And for Nora that was enough. It meant the wounds were healing, not erased but transforming into something softer. The moment they shared wasn't loud. It was gentle, like the closing of a door that had been open for too long, letting in cold, now finally sealed with warmth. Years later, on a warm spring day, Ellie stood at her high school graduation podium. The crowd cheered as she spoke about resilience, second chances, and the people who shaped her. "Some stories don't end where they're supposed to," she said. "Sometimes they pause, and then restart in unexpected ways." Her eyes found Nora in the crowd, and she smiled. Thank you to the person who didn't give up, even when she almost did. Afterward, Nora hugged her tighter than ever before. She didn't care about the past. In that moment she was just a mother, proud, present, and whole. She had lost years, yes, but she had found her way back. And the life she thought she'd sacrificed for ambition, it had waited for her all along. Not to punish her, but to remind her that love doesn't close its doors easily. Sometimes it simply leaves the light on. For whenever you're ready to come home.